Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of A Conversation with Carl. Remember, for the latest content, to hit the subscribe button. Today, I am beyond excited to welcome Tony Award-winning producer Bruce Robert Harris to the conversation. Harris has produced over 60 plays and musicals since 2005. His productions have won and been nominated for numerous awards. Harris is also known for producing and winning a Tony for the best musical revival of Pippin. Welcome, Bruce Robert Harris, to the conversation.
Thank you, Carl. Pleasure to meet you.
Yes, it's a pleasure. So you've had like an amazing career. So do you want to tell me the highlights? Or do you want me to go more specific?
Are we talking about? The one before producing? The career before producing, or just the producing career?
Well, you could talk about either or, but like you're a two-time Tony winner. Yes, you did the revival of Pippin, which got a Tony for that. What you tell me what you want to tell me about?
Well, I'll tell you that I was a dancer in my previous life. I went to the High School Performing Arts and I went to Juilliard. Upon graduating, I was a dancer performer for classical ballet and then into contemporary. And then actually on a Women of Bet, someone bet me to audition for a show and I got the show, which was pretty incredible. I worked my way up. I have had a wonderful career. 27 years as a dancer, a good amount of touring all over the world, film and television. And then at 41, after 27 years, I retired and I started to be a commercial producer and sit on the other side of the table, which I have been doing now for the last 23 years.
It's hard on the body.
I don't know. I had a wonderful time dancing. I think I have more accidents on my bicycle than I ever had dancing. I was always in really great shape. I still get up every morning at 6 a.m. and go to the gym. Fitness has always been healthy and important to me, and it was instilled by my professors. And I think it's part of the discipline I have as a producer, and it's why I get a lot of things done, I think.
So tell me about the producing part of this. So 41, you start producing. How do you get into it?
The first show that I ever produced was a benefit for the Momentum AIDS Project in New York City. And I approached Bill Russell and Janet Hood, who had a show called Elegies for Angels, Punks, and Raging Queens. And Bill Russell said there was no way I could do this show. We needed celebrities and stars, and it was 50 people and 4 singers. And Stephen DeAngelis, who is still a very good friend of mine, who was working for Grey Worldwide, helped me cast this show. And we had Mario Cantone and Steven Spinella and all these amazing actors. And Norm Lewis and Stephanie Pope, Alice Ripley, and Emily Skinner were our singers. And we put this whole thing together. We raised a lot of money, and it was really the birth of what was my career. Ted Koppel got a whiff of what we were doing. This was at the Haft Auditorium down at FIT, the Fashion Institute of Technology, and interviewed me and asked all about what I was doing. And Meredith Vieira was our spokesperson at the time, and I was the producer, and I put this whole thing together, and it was amazing. We made a lot of money.
What year is
very
this?
poignant. This was 2001, April 2001. And that's how I started producing. I worked for years on a dance show with a business partner down there called the Elan Awards, was a choreographic dance show. I started a not-for-profit, which was the Gay Pride series. I did very well-known plays by gay authors, but obviously I wasn't making a lot of money doing that, but I raised money on 9/11 for the firehouses locally in my neighborhood, gave them a nice check. And I started commercial producing with my business partner, Jack W. Batman, who unfortunately passed this past year. And we were business partners for about 22 years. And our first show on Broadway was the Scottsboro Boys. But we also worked up at the White Plains Performing Arts Center as producers for 3 seasons, and all the while doing another not-for-profit called Gay Fest NYC, in which we produced over 20 shows and plays and musicals together. And the first show we did on Broadway was the Scottsboro Boys. And you just talked about Pippin. That was actually my 3rd show. I did Clybourne Park 2 years before, and I also won a Tony for that. And we won a Pulitzer for that play. It was a play by Bruce Norris. Yeah.
So when you're starting in the business, how hard was it? Because I imagine it must have been you breaking into something that people, I'm not sure, do they want you? Do they not want you? Because it's a competitive business.
I was very well known as a dancer. So I think when you break into a new profession, no matter what it is, people look at back at what you've done and they make an association about he count past eight, eight counts of eight and choreography and dancing and acting and singing. But I would tell you that I went to the Commercial Theater Institute. I went to the 14-week program. And in that 14-week program, I met Jack Batman and he took a shine to me. I took a shine. Well, as we always say, he came and sat down next to me and he's been sitting down next to me for the last 22 years. Jack was a huge influence. He worked in film and television a little bit, was also an agent at the William Morris Agency, did a lot of casting for a lot of producers in town. And I primarily was really into musicals. He taught me a lot about plays. And to get together as a team, we started raising money from people we knew and became co-producing on projects before we started lead producing. So it was a real test of time. Jack was 19 years my senior, and I think that we both had really good instincts about the industry. And the one thing that I've always been able to do is believe in the opportunity of live theater. And I
Yeah.
still believe that. And when I talk to investors constantly, that's how I raise money. This season, I'm doing Dog Day Afternoon. I'm doing Death of a Salesman. In the fall, I'll be opening Magic Mike Live with Channing Tatum. I've been partnering with them for 7 years. We're also producers on the London show. We'll be on the producers on the New York show and Dreamgirls, which is going to open in
Wow.
December. So I'm really excited of the slate of shows that I have. Last year was a turning point because we did John Proctor and we did Good Night and Good Luck, and they were both very successful for the investors. And it's a question of building your resume, it's building your career. I mean, this is a job and a career to me. To a lot of producers on Broadway, this is a hobby. I'm sitting in a beautiful office that I'm happy to say Channing Tatum and Magic Mike helped me build. And we've been very successful with the brand. And if you can make your investors money, they'll come back and you'll get to do more exciting projects. Everything is a building process, everything is a learning process. Not one day is like another. So I'm always
Yeah.
going in different directions every day.
Since 2001, how has the LGBTQ changed in Broadway? Because I know that there's a lot of
That's
gay
it.
people on Broadway. I just saw Oh Mary, and that's a great show. You laugh the whole time. But how has that changed? Like, could have Oh Mary been done in 2001?
Well, we have a very famous performer here in town who is a good friend of mine. His name is Charles Bush. And Charles was doing exactly that back then. But at the time, it wasn't as accepted. I'll go
Yes.
back a little bit in time when I talk about Gay Fest. When we were doing an LGBTQ or an LGBT festival for people with thematic material that we were producing for writers that were trying to get that out there, much like what I did with the Elan Awards for dance and choreography, doing these festivals helped gay playwrights get their message out. In today's world, there's a gay character in everything on television and on stage. Back then, that wasn't happening. So a lot of my sponsors and a lot of people that helped me pay for Gay Fest were banks and local businesses who really wanted to pitch in. And we put this play festival on, and my charity was the Harvey Milk High School and the Hedrick Martin Institute. And if you know Harvey Milk, he was a big believer in helping young people be
Yeah.
assimilated and have the opportunity of living. Some of these kids living on the street, their families threw them out, they became gay. I would say, to answer your question, this is the longer version, but from 2001 to 2025, celebrities have come out, athletes have come out. There are parts written that can be very gay. Broadway has turned into something that was not 25 years ago. No. And it was very difficult having the kind of festival that we had, getting money from sponsors and banks and companies. That was easy. But presenting this material was always a tough run. I was very fortunate, very fortunate. Earlier in my career, both Jack and I had one of the best press agents. His name is Rick Miramontes, and Rick was amazing. And one of the first shows that we were lead producers on was my trip down the pink carpet with Leslie Jordan. And Lily Tomlin came on board, and her wife came on board. And it was really quite remarkable to put the show up in New York because Leslie had only written a book, and Jack and I had asked him to do a benefit for us for our festival for Gay Fest. And we sat in the audience. Jack was on one side and I was on the other side. And we were like, wait a minute, this is commercial. We had to turn this into a show. And we convinced Leslie to do this. He had a brilliant director named David Galligan, and we were able to produce this in New York. And we also took Leslie to London. So the time has changed where people would accept material. And I think that acceptance is happening now. When you look at Broadway and you look at costumes and dances and characters that are written for the stage, it's part of life. It's part of what we live with. That's part of art, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, it's always changing, and you have to push the envelope, but you also, at the same time, as while you're pushing the envelope, you also have to make sure that you can fill the seats. So,
Absolutely. And you know, what's interesting is Dog Day Afternoon was basically about a bank robber who is robbing the bank to pay for his lover's sex change operation. So here we are in 2025. The show has an advance north of $6 million. Everybody wants to see the show. These two main characters coming from The Bear on television, coming to Broadway in a play. I just think that it's so interesting to see how everything has evolved in musicals and in plays.
yeah.
And when you look at the things that are out there, they're representing what's going on in the world. It represents life. And when you go to the theater, you should suspend your own story and buy into the stories and the journey of all these characters. I have to say that one of the best shows that I've ever been a part of, and I was actually a performer on stage doing, was Ragtime the Musical. I was very happy to be part of the first national tour company, rehearsing on Broadway with the Broadway company,
Yeah.
becoming a replacement. But the show has a journey. It shows you where they started at the beginning of the century and where it ends at the end of the century. Lynn and Stephen wrote something so beautiful. What's being performed in Lincoln Center, it's on everybody's top 10 list. So
Well,
if you look back at history, that's what you can see.
I saw Ragtime, and when I walked out, I thought, wow, this could be written today.
Correct.
This
And
could be,
that's what a good show can be. Absolutely. Percent. You know, look at Anne Juliet on Broadway. Anne Hathaway, who's Shakespeare's wife,
yeah,
decides to take us in a different direction. What a clever idea. And
yeah.
to use the local songbook of all these amazing artists to project a historical thing of writing. I mean, I went to Juilliard and I took courses in Shakespeare. I was scared every time I went in for a test. But now, when I look back and I look at some of the shows that I've done, there's Shakespeare in almost everything that we do. So we do go back and look at what people wrote and what the timing is on that. And we bring it forward and we create new theater with it.
Well, that's what good theater is, right? Making me relate to the story, to see
I
myself and all the
lost you.
characters. That's what good
Right.
theater is, right?
Absolutely. I agree.
I go there, I see myself in the characters, I see myself, I understand, I got a different point of view, and my conventional wisdom is challenged.
Well, let's talk for a moment about Dreamgirls, which is
Yeah.
coming in December. This will be 20 years from the movie and 45 years from the original show. How exciting is that to revisit Motown and all the influence of music and what was made and what we latched onto and what became part of our culture as we move forward. It's one of the most exciting shows, revivals. Other than Pippin, I loved Pippin. I thought the invention that Chet Walker brought to it as choreographer and the director and what Barry and Fran did with Pippin was absolutely beautiful. Unfortunately, revivals only last for a couple of years, but fortunately, we had a very good run with Pippin, and I was very excited about the tour, and it's still one of my favorite shows.
Are you worried about how they're going to do? There's a lot of people like Broadway's not making money, Broadway's not filling up seats. But every time I go to a theater, it's full. So,
Well, when you look at shows like The Lost Boys, which took 20 months to recoup, musicals are definitely more expensive. There is no question. We have a lot more unions that we need to deal with. There's a lot more, these are bigger casts with bigger orchestras, and prices of things have gone kind of crazy. I'll tell you that when I worked on Scottsboro Boys, which was the first musical I had ever done on Broadway, and I was Tony nominated 16 times. I woke up one morning, we had all these nominations. It was so exciting. That musical was only 4.1 million.
Yeah.
You can't even do a play on Broadway for 4.1 million. A Dog Day Afternoon is north of 7 million. Now, we'll probably get all that back and the investors will make money. But the success of a show is when an investor gets their capital back. Then they're willing to bet on you and your taste on the next show. And last year, doing Good Night and Good Luck and John Proctor really sealed that for me. Plays, really, there'll be a lot of competition this year for plays. Musicals, we don't have so many. We'll have 2 or 3 possibly vying for that
Yeah.
award. It is unfortunate that things have gotten too expensive. I've done things in London where things are less expensive and they have limited runs and they actually return with a little bit of profit. And then normally those people take their profits and put them back into a show. And I think London has a much better tax scheme. For a budget that you have in London, you can have a 41% tax credit. Here on Broadway, our governor Hochul is working very well with Chuck Schumer to keep the 21% tax abatement that we have, which would help every show. So what I mean by that is that if a show returned 50% to the investors and the 21% comes in, they'll actually get 71%, which is almost
Yeah.
two-thirds of their investment, which is a great opportunity for them. So I wish that the tax scheme was a little bit better. I wish the government and the state governments would support Broadway a bit more, considering how much money it brings in billions of dollars to New York. And everybody down from the subway on up, from
Yeah.
MTA up, everybody benefits from the fact that people are coming to Broadway. I wish they would value it as much as they do on the West End. But you're 100% right. The expense on a musical is really out there. I'm very excited to say that I am working on a new musical, which I'm the lead producer on, and we're trying to keep this musical around 16 or 17 million. That to me sounds astronomical, but at the end of the day, that's what it costs now.
Yeah. It sounds astronomical to me too. 16 million to do a show.
Well, you're looking at Lost Boys, that's over 20 million.
Yeah.
It's crazy when you add in all the effects and all the things that they want to do with music and sound and staging and special effects. It's a lot.
Yeah. Well, when I go to see a musical and then you go see a play I call is the cerebral New York crowd.
But that's true.
It's a different crowd in this in
Well, a play is a much more educated, intellectual crowd. And a lot of plays are supported by local people or in the area here in New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, Long Island, upstate. Very well supported. And if you're doing a 22-week run, like we are with Dog Day Afternoon or Death of a Salesman, and you have a star, like we have Nathan Lane starring in this show, Death of a Salesman, people want to see what he's
yeah.
going to do and they want to come and see him. Broadway has become a bit of a star driven vehicle. And I'll admit that myself. There are things that I'm doing that I make a better decision on when I do have a star. And getting investors interested and getting behind a show like that is paramount to their
Yeah.
decision about investing $1,000 with you.
Yeah. No, it's difficult when you're trying to get people to come in and see a show and when you go down to the board. Like I love going to the board. My daughter loves going to the board with me too. Like we go down there and we'll sit there and we'll wait in the line too. And she just thinks the board is really fun, like to go and you wait down for TKTS. But are you
Kind of like winning the lottery when you get up to the window if there's still tickets left for the show you wanted to see.
yeah, it's part of the whole New York experience.
Agreed.
Yeah. When you're looking at shows and we're talking about different shows and you've traveled around, how do audiences react in different parts of the country to theater? I'll use my example. I saw Fiddler on the Roof years ago when Rosie was on it, and then I saw it in Yiddish the whole time. Joel Grey did that, and I thought that was the best Fiddler I'd ever seen in my
Jewish Fiddler,
entire.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it was like that was the first time I saw the characters as they should have been, But there's different times, and I've been with audiences, people next to me who are from like the Midwest or from down south, don't connect to it. So
Well, let's talk about shows like Back to the Future and Beetlejuice.
yeah,
These are shows that had an identity and a brand from a movie. So when people come to New York and they see Wicked or they see Beetlejuice or they see Back to the Future, they know the product that they're getting. This is not and I'm sure I'm going to be crucified for saying this, but this is not a high grade product.
Yeah.
Mostly people in New York who understand scripts and Shakespeare and are a little bit more intelligent go to plays, and plays can dive in deep
Yeah.
and really hit a a chord, you know? And musicals are in many senses dumbed down so that an audience will stay with the story or stay with the character or watch the character's journey. I've always felt, or actually I'm not gonna take credit for this phrase, but my business partner Jack, who passed this past year, said everything he ever learned about life came from the musical theater.
Yeah.
And really, if you look at everything from Fanny Brice all the way through what we're up to today, and you look at Wicked as a prequel to The Wizard of Oz, people go to that because they recognize the brand. But the show is brilliant. It's beautiful, it's dazzling, and it's wonderful. But that is what people expect.
When
Moulin
I,
Rouge being on Broadway all these years, people understood what they were seeing because there was a movie. They saw the movie, and then they come to Broadway and they see it, and it's a dazzling night out. We're not Las Vegas, right? We don't have the casinos and those big shows, but Broadway is responsible for bringing entertainment to everyone and the masses. But musicals are mostly dumbed down, and plays are always a bit more intelligent.
when I saw Back to the Future and I was sitting there and Huey Lewis's song Back to the Future came on at the end, and this mom was sitting in the row ahead of us, and she stood up and her son was just sitting on his phone. She was singing, Back in Time and Huey Lewis's song.
Generational.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I thought to myself, the show doesn't stay. Because I looked at it and I thought to myself, wow, he doesn't even know the song. And the mom is jumping up and down singing,
Right. That's why some shows like & Juliet are so, in my opinion, clever, or Six, the musical.
Yeah.
Very clever because they're using subject matter like, let's talk about Six. It's Henry and his wives. And what child that never really read literature understands what that is, but when they go to see that show, it's thoroughly entertaining and they're educated and they're entertained. And I think things like Six and Juliet are important to educate a young audience that it can be relevant to them.
Yeah.
And constantly we're looking at shows that are coming in. Is this a family audience? Is this going to hit the tween audience? You know, if we put
Yeah.
Taylor Swift in a musical, everybody would come because it's Taylor Swift. And then maybe they'd learn something about what the theater is, right? And that's a reason, and I think it's really important to say this coming out of COVID. I think one of the reasons we're having all these stars on Broadway is it attracts another audience and it keeps Broadway strong because they have some identity to it. I'd like to talk about my off-Broadway show, Heathers, like it's doing amazing business.
Yeah.
There are young girls and boys in the audience that scream. I just went to see the new cast. They're absolutely amazing. We have semi-celebrities in the cast, and that show sells out every night. They stand and they scream and they have ovations because it has something to do with everything that they're going through. Not necessarily the most benign material, I would say, in Heathers, because it does deal
Yeah.
with teenage bullying.
Yeah.
It does deal with family trauma from parents to children. It deals with all the things, even gun violence. We're experiencing this all throughout the United States, and Heathers deals with that subject head on.
My niece has seen it twice or three times.
Thank you for
And
buying a ticket.
my daughter has seen it once. My sister-in-law took my daughter there, and they both really liked it. It talked to them.
There is a wonderful song in the show that deals with children turning 17, and they're in high school, and the peer pressure and the bullying and the things that happen with their parents, or what they tell their parents and they don't tell their parents. Heathers is a brilliant musical that's running now. We're going into almost half a year, and I really do believe the musical will be there for a long time. Little Shop of Horrors is the only other off-Broadway musical playing as a long-ended run because these attract the younger audiences. And I do believe when people go to see Heathers, they're probably willing to go out and buy another ticket to another show. But, if we had Peter Pan running and we had these other family shows running, they would go to that. But Heathers is very complicated. It's very complicated. It's very real. It's very what's going on now. And I think a lot of kids like your nieces and people that you've just mentioned, they connect to the
Yeah.
material.
No, it's
Definitely.
important. And it's important to create another generation who is going to
Absolutely.
come and see the show. So they want to be there, they want to be part of it. How do audiences in you said you traveled internationally, you've produced how do other audiences in Europe and the rest of the world respond to your shows?
I was very flattered when I was able to do Mr. Mistopheles in Zurich, Switzerland, and in Germany. And in Germany and Zurich, Switzerland, they don't get a lot of musicals. They do now that come in and go out. But really, it was only Cats, Phantom of the Opera, and Schön und das Beast or Beauty and the Beast. They responded. They're big fans. They're crazy fans. There's hundreds of people at the stage door. Really take to those musicals. You have to know that a lot of the musicals, let's just talk about The Great Gatsby for a moment. The Great Gatsby is going to have an amazing life in Asia because the main producer bought the rights to bring it back to his own country, and it's going to do fantastic. I believe these shows do better outside the United States than they do in. And any chance that I have that I can introduce an investor to a tour, the tours do well, and they audiences do take to them even more than Broadway. I'm getting ready to send Tommy out next year on a national tour, and I think Tommy will go do really well. It has a lot of these issues in the actual piece that people will identify with. Plus, the music is great. Lauren
Music's
Lataro did the
amazing.
choreography. Des McAnoff is our director. So I think the show will do wonderful. And was so disappointed that we didn't have a longer run on Broadway, and maybe because we were tucked away in the Nederlander Theater on First Street. But I thought the show was really brilliant. I think foreign audiences take to the American musicals much more. I think Americans are very demanding of what they see and what's spectacular and what the storyline is, or that's not for me. Or I think Asian audiences in China and around the globe love what we're doing, and I think
It's
that that's
ex-
why these shows make so much money there.
it's expensive to go see a show. And if you're taking a family of four, you can
Yep.
land up spending $500, $600.
Absolutely, especially if somebody drives in and they're parking the car, they're not just going to see the show, they wanna go to dinner, and it's a full night out, especially when I was a young child, my parents used to drive into the city, and we would drive to 50th. We would park in a garage. We would walk 1 or 2 blocks to the Howard Johnson that was right there. We'd have a little dinner, we'd see the show, and we would wait at we'd wait at the restaurant. My father would pull the car around, we'd get in the car and right out through the tunnel. So I never really saw the city, but I was very, very fortunate to be exposed to that. And I love that because a lot of the famous people that we see today directing and choreographing at that time were in the ensemble. So you
Yeah.
can see how people's careers were born. But I'm in my early 60s. A lot of young people are not following Broadway that way. They're following a brand like
Yeah.
Heather's or Britney Spears music in And Juliet. And that's why those are popular. So it's important to have those to educate the young audiences so that they will educate themselves into other products. It's very interesting. Dog Day Afternoon, the
Yeah.
biggest zip code that we're selling to are men in Staten Island
Wow.
because
Yeah.
it's a 70s piece.
Yeah.
I mean, I plan to show up at opening night wearing a 70s suit because that's the period and that's what it is. And I think people like to escape back
Yeah.
into history. And that's why I think we see these products coming back an awful lot.
Yeah. As we wrap up, is there anything else you want to tell me?
Well, I would just ask your listeners to go and see a musical or a play, support Broadway. It's really important. What's happened down at the Kennedy Center is a shame. It's going away, and I don't think it'll ever come back. And God willing, that building will not get destroyed. Built by the Kennedys for John F. Kennedy. I would ask anyone if they're interested, if they wish to reach out, if you're interested in investing in a musical, or a play. There's a lot of things coming. I'm very excited. I have a play that's going out to Bay Street Theater on Long Island, and it is about Mr. Halston, and it's about his life and what he went through as a designer and the influences he put out on the world and most women who like to dress up and dress in couture. And I'm very excited about that. I'm a lead producer on that. And I'm excited for Dreamgirls, and Magic Mike is going to be a big smash in the city. We're opening right here on 47th and 8th. We're building a nightclub, and we're going to perform in that nightclub like we do in London. And I think it'll be a big success. Channing and his team are wonderful to work with. They're very kind, and this is definitely a show for women. It's a female empowerment piece that Channing is a big advocate for, and I'm excited by it. I'm actually excited for the plays this year. I think next year we're going to see a lot of musicals on Broadway, and I think the competition this year will be through the plays. And I really hope people come out and support Broadway, because it supports the greatest city in the world, which is New York
Yes.
City. And I've lived here and worked here my whole life. I love it. I do love to take vacations and go somewhere warm. Weather and the snow has been a little too much for me to get around in, but
Yeah.
to work every day in hopes that the magic of live theater will live on. And I hope everybody supports that.
Robert Harris, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for listening today. And as always, let me know what you think in the comments. And until next time, everyone, be safe.
Thanks, Carl.